Hey guys, it's Kai and welcome back to my channel. This video is going to be a fun sewing tutorial on this little sequin poncho coat tearaway. I've only ever done one other tutorial with sequins in the past, and it was like a full-on dance costume with fringe. I wanted to do something a lot simpler, a lot more beginner friendly, so this one is really simple. I went to the store and bought 3 yards of sequins and 3 yards of lining. You could really only shave it down to like 2.5. I only used 80 inches of it, which, yeah, you could actually only get 2.25 yards of each. But a lot of you guys have been asking me to do a sewing tutorial on like reveal coats. So this is a pretty simple one that I fashioned together. The way this works is there's just 2 buttons, one here and one here, and then you just tear them apart. Here's a video of me wearing one that I made in red. It's just a really cute element on stage, and then it's also just a very cute cover-up and something to just walk around in. I think it is very cute. So I think it's super simple. It's practically a one-size-fits-all, so if you guys are interested in using my measurements, I'll put them down in the description. But let me just cut straight to the tutorial. So you guys, the first thing that you want to do is measure how far down on your body you want this thing to go. So if I start measuring from my shoulder down, let's say I want it to go down just to right above my knee, that would hit at right around 40 inches. So if I double that for the front and the back, then that means my rectangle of fabric needs to be 80 inches long. 80 inches, I've rounded that up to 3 yards of fabric, so I got 3 yards of the sequins and 3 yards of my lining fabric. One consideration you have to make is also going to be the width of the fabric. Everywhere I looked, sequin came on a roll that was 50 inches wide, which just happens to be right around the perfect length to go from wrist to wrist. That just means that whatever lining fabric you buy, you have to make sure that it's also about 50 inches wide or more. If it's less than that, then you just have a little bit extra work to do putting the pieces together to make sure that's the right width. The point is that I want to have a rectangle that's 50 inches wide and 80 inches long, but of course you can make whatever adjustments you want to your own body. So I lay out my lining fabric and fold it in half along the width, and I cut it short to 40 inches, so the full length is that 80 inches that we were just talking about. Now we want to cut a neck hole in the front, which I'm etching out with this marker for you to see. Just find where the center of the top is, right below the fold, and sketch out a circle for your neck. And then from there, we want to cut out a slit down the middle of the front, so let me make a straight line just down the middle. Remember how I said my sequins were only 50 inches wide? Well, it turns out that this lining fabric that I found is 60 inches wide, so I have to shave off some of the sides. Well, I want to curve out the corners anyway, so I'm measuring 25 inches away from the center on the top, so my width will be 50 inches, and I'm just freehand drawing a curve to meet the bottom edge. I only have to draw this with marker on one side because I can fold this again in half and cut out all the curves of all 4 corners of the rectangle using one cut. And now we have ourselves a big oval. Now we just have to cut out the front slit and neck hole, but notice how I've unfolded it by now. If I did this on the fold, then I would get a neck hole and slit in the front and back, which I don't want. I just want to cut along the marker lines. You can still cut out the neck hole on some fold to make it symmetrical, but then you have to fold lengthwise there. Sounds a little complicated maybe, but the end result is this really simple shape, and that's probably the hardest part of the whole video. So now you want to lay out your sequin fabric. This is some black and blue double-sided sequin that I found at my local fabric store. And I'm going to lay my cutout right over top of it, right sides together. So maybe you can see where this is going now. Once I have it laying completely flat and centered, both layers of fabric, I'm going to pin all the way around the edges and cut all the way around to replicate the same exact shape, including the neck hole, including the slit. And the pins are going to keep helping in place while we cut, and we'll also keep them on there so that we can take this right to the sewing machine. Before hitting the machine to sew along everywhere there's pins, I'm going to mark out a space in the back where I won't stitch, and that little 6-inch gap along the edge will be a way for us to pull this thing inside out later on. Sewing with sequins can be pretty daunting, but it's a really good project for you guys to try out for your first time because you're only sewing one layer of sequin with one layer of fabric. If it's 2 or more layers of sequins together, then sometimes the machine does stall, the needle sometimes has a hard time pushing through. I've definitely broken a couple of needles in the past, but I had no issues at all with this project. One tip to help you sew with sequins, in this case where we have double-sided sequins, make sure they're all brushed to the same side, because if there's some going one way and some going the other way, there's bound to be some sequins that are kind of laying on their sides all jagged like, and you'll feel that the surface would be bumpy. And that's not going to go under the needle very nicely. So the sequins need to be smoothed down flat. And if you just sew on your longest straight stitch, it should be a breeze. Once you approach the gap that we left, you're going to want to do a reverse stitch to reinforce the stitch here. And then just lift up the needle, lift up the foot, and push your fabric forward over the gap. And then go right back to sewing, starting your stitch with a reverse stitch. Once you're finally done sewing around the entire garment, around everywhere we put those pins, you're going to reach into it from the gap and pull it inside out. And this puts a lot of stress on the area around the gap, and without us doing the reverse stitches, the stitches around the gap will want to come apart and tear the hole even bigger, which we don't want to happen. If you want to close up the gap, you can do that with just a needle and thread by hand, but this is where we are now. We're almost done finally. The final touch I want to add is going to be the closure method at the top so we can close this and tear it away. You can use Velcro, you can use a hook and eye closure, even a zipper. I chose to use 2 little snap buttons. So I tried on my coat and decided where at the top I wanted it to close. I wanted one right under my neck and a second one going about 6 inches below it. And I used little sewing pins to mark out where I needed to sew on the button so that they would connect. Keep in mind that it is going to have a male side and a female side that needs to go on opposite sides. The way you attach a button like this is with a needle and thread. If you look closely, they have these 4 little holes going all the way around. You're meant to thread the needle through the hole, dig it into the fabric, and back up, and through all the holes multiple times so that it's really secure. If you do a good job at sewing it, it's even more secure than gluing them on. And if, for instance, you one day want to replace these or take them out, thread can easily be undone, but glue leaves behind an entire mess. So try to use hand sewing whenever you can. You know, my mom used to cross stitch as a hobby, and she used to hand sew all of our clothes whenever we get a hole in them. So I got comfortable with hand sewing very early on. She even had a sewing machine at one point, which I actually broke from playing with it out of curiosity. Now I do all the sewing in the family, and I won't let my little brother near my machine. If he's curious, he can watch my YouTube videos. Anyway, you should stitch it enough times so that this feels really secure. You're going to be snapping these apart and putting quite a bit of stress on them, so make sure they're really tight. I like these snap buttons because they come apart real easily. They're not as secure as a big strip of Velcro or a zipper, but you know, the worst thing is when you have to fidget around with any type of reveal, like, girl, the beat dropped 10 seconds ago and you're like, 1 sec, it's coming off. And I find these snap buttons to just be really seamless. So this is the top button and this is the bottom button. I put the female buttons over here and the male sides of them over here for no particular reason at all. All you have to do is just click them together. And then when I'm ready to take it off, I'll just reach in here and then pull them apart. So I hope you guys liked this video and that you learned something cool, and I hope you get the chance to try this out because it was really easy. If you've never sewed with sequins before, I think this is a good first project for you to try out to get the feel of it, because you really can't go wrong with just a cover up. Let me know down below in the comments what other tutorials you guys want to see from me, and if you like this one, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. But until I see you guys next time, I hope you're all doing well. Bye!